I go back to the question of housing and education. Let's pick education. How does one bring about compensatory action in education? By having better schools for young Negro children than for white children, if we are talking about integration?
This is very simple. By providing remedial training in reading and in arithmetic, and by providing the best of teachers to these schools which have deprived children in them.
By now, when you say deprived children,
yes,
you're not limiting this to Negro children alone.
Of course, but the larger percentage of Negro kids are deprived than whites. And therefore, I think a larger percentage of the most skilled teachers are required in that section.
All right, now I grant that, but the question I'm still trying to iron out, and I think Mr. Farmer has for me, is this question as to whether the compensation for discrimination and the lack of equality is to be another kind of discrimination or another kind of inequality. And I think you answer that in the negative when you say that in the schools that you would establish for the previously underprivileged or the underprivileged would include schools for children, not just Negroes, but Puerto Ricans and other underprivileged persons. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, I think you're right there. I would not limit our employment demands to Negroes. I would include Puerto Ricans and other minorities throughout our country, which have been similarly discriminated against, though not for so long a period of time as Negroes.
Puerto Ricans weren't enslaved. Yeah, this is a problem that stems from slavery. And this compensation, yes, sir, this compensation is coming to people who were enslaved by the white man for 400 years. The Puerto Ricans don't even fit into this picture.
Well, they do fit into it.
No,
the
problem is the Negro problem. They're not lynching Puerto Ricans.
If a dark-skinned Puerto Rican went down to Mississippi, he probably would be lynched too.
Spanish, he wouldn't be lynched.
No, they don't.
It's the Negro here, and as long as he can speak Spanish or some other language, or if he ties his head up with a turban or something, he can go anywhere in Mississippi or in your home that he desires.
You're not aware of the fact, are you, that African students have been arrested in our demonstrations in the South?
When they
speak French.
When they have been mistaken for the so-called Negro in America, they've been arrested.
What I'm saying is that many Puerto Ricans are mistaken for Negroes. I do not think discrimination stems only from slavery.
Let me turn to Mr. Walker.
You say that Mr. Farmer's idea of compensatory treatment of the Negro has portents of disaster. It does have portents of disaster for the system from which the Negro community is suffering. And over against that, I don't think Malcolm X's analogy of the nations in Africa and Asia that are freeing themselves, you have there on the one hand a black or brown majority, whereas the Negro community in America is a black or brown minority. And I don't think the analogy quite holds water, and this is why we...
But your whole philosophy comes out of India. This nonviolent thing is based upon the 400 million Indians doing passive sit-down on 100,000 whites, and you use that. Well, in this country, you're still a minority, yet you're going to use tactics that was used by a dark minority in another land.
I think this shows how little you know about nonviolence, because Gandhi began his campaign among the Indians in South Africa, who are a minority.
And they're still they're still a minority, and they still have the problem. But Gandhi's fame came from having gotten freedom for the people of India from the English, and he used non-violent methods, which means you have a great big dark elephant-type creature sitting down on a little white mouse. But here in America, you have a little black mouse trying to pull a sit-down, non-violent tactic on a white elephant.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, just for a minute, and then I'll exercise non-violent methods to enforce a break. Just go ahead.
Nonviolence is more effective when you have large numbers of people. That is what we've found out in Birmingham. It's what we've found out all over North Carolina.
What did you gain in Birmingham?
Now, wait a minute. Let me tell you what we've gained in North Carolina.
What did you gain in Birmingham?
Let me tell you what we've gained there. He can answer that. This was his campaign in Birmingham. Ask me about our campaign.
What did you gain in North Carolina?
Let me tell you what we've gained. We've gained jobs. We've gained open employment in Greensboro, North Carolina. One of the officials of the city who is in charge of employment has announced that hereinafter all city employment will be on a merit basis and there'll be no discrimination. A committee has been set up whereby grievances of individuals who feel that they've been discriminated against because of race will be dealt with. We are represented on that committee. In 6 cities in North Carolina, the theaters have desegregated. Places that serve the public in 5 cities have desegregated. and the whole state is becoming an open state. Now, wait a minute.
Is it a gain to go to a theater for a man who hasn't got a job?
It's a gain to get a job. It's a gain to get a job, and it's jobs that we're providing. Now, it's a gain also to go to the theater. It's a gain because it's not the theater so much, it's not the cup of coffee at the lunch counter. It's the dignity that a person achieves. Is it a gain to have a business over on the other side of the tracks to which you can go, but when you walk downtown, you're discriminated against and cannot go there? What I say, Mr. X, is that all places that serve the public, black and white, must serve all members of the public. We are members of the public, whether you want to admit it or not. If we're not members of the public, then what are we?
Why do you have the race problem in this country if we're members of the public?
We're members of the public, and that's why we are trying to wipe out racial discrimination.
You'll never wipe it out with a desegregated theater.
Well, I
we're
may
wiping
not,
it out
guess,
with
but
jobs.
may I, however, ineffectually, over the past 60 seconds, try to have a break now, and we'll be back in just a moment.